Hello guys to Air Tycoon Online 3, Episode 6. In today's episode, it's once again going to be a pretty fast episode because I do not have a lot of money. What I've just done is I've ordered a airplane off the used market. It is a 707 320F cargo plane, so I'll be able to use that for next turn. And I've also ordered a 747 leased. Now, I'd like to show you guys a point that was harder to make in Air Tycoon Online 2, but is now quite easy to make in Air Tycoon Online 3, which is how fucking strong leased 747s are. They cost you 50k, so you can think of it as you take a net loss of 50k for one turn in value, and look at what it pays you back in. I don't know why this price is so high. Hold up. Look at this. This is the 747. Its net profit is, what is this? 3 million on one half of a stopover route. I mean, it only cost you 50k to get that insane amount of return of 3k net profit. Like, if we take a look at all these 747 routes, as we can see, look at it, 3k, 3k, 4.3k here, and 4k in Napoli. I think the reason why these aren't making as much is because I'm charging a bit too much. Yeah, so once this business class gets full, and let's see, yeah, okay, this half of the route is already full, but once this business class gets full, this route will be making even more slightly. Of course, I'm going to be going down all these routes. A lot of these routes are very good. New York to Dusseldorf is once again an excellent route. And once I put 747s on these routes, I can see them making a lot and a lot of money. Yeah, like as you can see, for some reason the price was set a bit too high, which is why this is not making that much right now. But these routes really do have the potential to make a lot of money. Yeah, one thing I have noticed in Air Tycoon, sorry, in Air Tycoon Online 3 compared to previous Air Tycoons is even if you have a very good route and a very high demand for that route compared to the size of the aircraft you're going to use, like for example, a 707 on a stopover route is not a particularly high capacity on that route. Even if it's a monopoly for a decent route, then it still will not fill if the satisfaction is not decent. Um, and as long as the what's it called, and if the price is too high, this game considers the factors of satisfaction and mostly I think the pricing though to a much more strenuous extent than previous Air Tycoons. The closer you get to 1.4 pricing, um, the the less people you get at an almost exponential rate. It's quite intense if you do not do I have any airplanes for this? Yes, I do. You lose a lot of passengers very quickly if you price too high. It's most routes, which I consider to be worth making. You should be able to price at least 1.2 to achieve 100% occupancy. I feel like that's about the threshold of route you want to be making. Anything worse than that is not really profitable enough anymore, especially near the beginning of the game. Maybe in the later game, that's still fine because you don't care so much about your profit ratio and just about your total amount of profit period. That becomes more important later game, but for now, I'd say if you can't price above 1.2 to achieve 100% occupancy, or very close to like 95 or something like that, then the route's not good enough. Like for example, most of my routes are hovering around 90+% occupancy. I'd say this is probably like an average route. As you can see, this is the middle of my list, so this is an average occupancy route. Um, for some reason, the pricing is screwed up. I do not know why. Let me change that. But as you can see, um, we have almost 100% occupancy on in the 1.2s for pricing. Um, that's true for Why is my business class so expensive? Something's odd. Something's off with that. I think I might have accidentally changed it one day or something. But let me. Now that I've manually adjusted some, I cannot go into the adjust all and change that. Wait, what? I just realized I have 19 schedules on a DC 811 from New York to Chicago. That is hilarious. And it is making absolutely no money. That's a laugh. That's pretty funny, to be honest. And what was I saying? I was saying that I needed to change my pricing rate. I realize I have a lot of routes which are off on occupancy because for some reason the business class is so expensive. Okay, well, this one's normal. So I guess it's just some of the routes. I'm gonna go manually change them back, I guess. Yeah, for some reason, some of the business classes are set to 1.8 pricing, which is too much, which is why the occupancy is kind of poor. Um, yeah, I could do an adjust all, but it's a bit too late for an adjust all because if I do an adjust all the routes which I already have adjusted manually will become really low in pricing, and it's easy to just manually change it when I have this many routes. Of course, when I have more routes, the only possible way to really adjust the pricing for this many routes will to be an adjust all. Um, and basically, what I'll do for one turn is I'll set the pricing of every single route to maximum, and then I'll sort based on that the next turn's results. So basically, for example, later in the game, if I'm finding my company has a lot of routes where the pricing is off for some reason, the classes are not correct, what I'll do for one turn is I'll set every single price to 1.4. Of course, I'll take a loss in my profit for that one individual turn. And then based on that, I'll say if the occupancy is 100, well, we'll of course keep the pricing as is because if you can make 100% with maximum pricing, then that's excellent, of course, right? And then if the occupancy is between 100 and between 0 and 95, then I'll minus 3 3% pricing. I'll do this for each class, by the way. And then I'll say if it's between 0 and 90, I'll decrease it by another 3%. So that means a route which had 90% occupancy has now been lowered, has had its price lowered by 6%. And then I'll go 85, like 0 to 85, another 3%, and so on and so forth. So what you end up with is your pricings are all set to a pretty appropriate level. Of course, you'll have to tinker with it. 3% per every 5% occupancy might not be the perfect amount. You might want to keep, micromanaging a couple percents here and there to squeeze a little bit more profit out of your company. Because, of course, when you have hundreds of routes or thousands of routes, 1% might be 100K a turn, which doesn't sound like a much, but it adds up over 600 turns to a considerable amount. Um, of course, when you're adjusting the prices by 6-7% plus, some of that can go almost straight into your net profit. It's quite a lot, to be honest. Um, yeah, what else? What else have I noticed in differences between Air Tycoon Online 2 and Air Tycoon Online 3? Russian planes are useless. That's another thing I've noticed. Um, the growth is slower by a little bit because you can't do short range routes, and because Russian planes are irrelevant, it means you have to buy more expensive planes from the get go, which means my profit percentage. And what I mean by that, I'm sure people who do business or finance will have actual terms for this, but the rate at which you grow relative to the size of your company um, is not fantastic. Like I think in Air Tycoon Online 2, there are points at the beginning of the game, especially if you start in about 1980, like or 1968 or later, where the 747s come out very immediately after you start playing the game. Sometimes you'll be able to grow like 10% of your value every single turn. It's ridiculous. Um, like if your company is worth 10 million, you might have, or like 1 million K, you might be profiting 100K a turn. It's really unbelievable and unrealistic for an airline. That's the kind of profitability you'll be able to achieve sometimes with Air Tycoon Online 2. That is basically never possible here. I remember like immediately after making all my routes and looking at that basically after I'd completed all my routes and they'd all filled up after the first day of playing, right? Usually I'd be around 8% of my company's value per turn, an increase. Well, after completing my all my routes in Air Tycoon Online 2, I did a little calculation and found that I was only gaining 2% of my value every turn, which is really low, but the game does start you off with more money than in Air Tycoon Online 2, so it's fair, but it's all in all a little bit slower um, than in Air Tycoon, which I don't mind. It's completely fine in my books. So yeah. Uh, New York to Rio, New Santiago to New York. Like, what's the other half of this stopover? Santiago to New York, New York to Phoenix. Is that one route or is that two routes? No, that's two routes. Let me quickly reset this game real quick. So, let me reset this game and see if I can get that routes list sorted based on when I made them. I'm not sure what button. Probably one of those buttons does that, but I'm not sure which one it is. So yeah, let me just quickly reset this game. See now if I go into my routes, I can see the routes which I made first. Oops. And most of these are my best routes, of course. So New York to Dusseldorf will be my choice to be upgraded to a 747. So that can hopefully become very profitable. One thing, of course, you have to do is you have to change the first price, the first class pricing, which I do find quite annoying because for some reason it sets to the lowest possible on the second half of the stopover. I really wish they made it a bit more consistent in the second half of the stopover. At least would set to a neutral price. And I think I can make a 707 route involving Vilnius. And then that will be all my airplanes for this turn, I guess. As you can see, I've been playing quite a lot off camera, like probably between every episode, I'm gaining 30 or so routes when I'm only making, 5, 6, 7, 8 like routes on camera every episode. This episode, I think it's only 3, but I have been playing a lot off camera. Basically, I'll check in every turn, use my aircraft, and then that kind of stuff. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you guys next time.